Okay, make sure that we're recording. We have two presenters with us today. Our first presenter is going to be Philip McCallion. He's a professor of the School of Social Welfare at the University of Albany and the co-director of the Center for Excellence in Aging and Community Wellness. Dr. McCallion also holds an appointment as a visiting professor at the School of Nursing and Midwifery at Trinity College in Dublin and is a Hartford faculty scholar and mentor. His work includes system design work on creating aging-prepared communities and on embedding evidence-based health promotion, care transition strategies, and participant-directed practices in aging services delivery. The evaluation of non-pharmacological interventions for persons with dementia and of psychoeducational interventions for family caregivers. Development of innovative demonstration projects designed to maintain aging persons with intellectual disabilities in the community and adaptation of palliative care principles for the end-of-life care for people with intellectual disabilities. Phil, thank you so much. I'm just going to take a second to introduce our second speaker before I transfer the presenter power over to Phil. Our second speaker is Dr. Marianne Spanos. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy at SUNY Buffalo in 1986 and her doctorate in physical therapy at Boston University in 2005. She practiced physical therapy for close to 20 years in Chautauqua County, working with older adults before her appointment as Chautauqua County's Office for the Aging Director in 2007. She feels her healthcare background has been invaluable to her role, and I would agree with you on that, as an aging director, especially in light of healthcare reform. The mission of the Office for the Aging has always been to develop programs and services that keep seniors safe, healthy, and living as independently as possible. However, healthcare reform has expanded this mission into services that bridge and form new connections between community-based services and medical programs. Living in Chautauqua County for the last 26 years, Dr. Spanos has enjoyed many activities at the Chautauqua Institution, both on and off season. The cross-section of older Americans and people from around the world who visit the institution makes Chautauqua an ideal forum to discuss not only healthcare reform, but many other issues facing our aging nation. The Office for the Aging welcomed this opportunity to speak with many different groups and hopes that we will lead to many more conversations. I'm really excited to have both of these speakers with us. I think they're going to share with us a lot of great information about incorporating evidence-based programming. And please, again, just to reiterate, to share your questions with us, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. Now, Philip, I'm going to go ahead and send this over to you, and you've got it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, we're very pleased to have the opportunity to be part of this webinar and to really encourage people to think about how they will embed evidence-based programs within their work. But also, and I know this is true for the other speaker as well, we are all here to help you all in making that possible. But let's just talk about evidence-based, because there are things that are best practices, there are things that we just know that work, and do they therefore constitute an evidence-based practice? And really, in terms of building an evidence base and for programs to be considered evidence-based, really it's based upon evidence that's resulted from randomized control trials. You know, we really believe that sort of when we carry out an intervention, if we're able to assign people randomly to two conditions, that we're able to control for all the other things that might explain why the change happened, so that then if a change does happen, then it must be because of the intervention. And ideally, actually, for something to be truly evidence-based, we would want there to be more than one randomized control trial, and we'd want more than one group of investigators to have been involved. So under the Older Americans Act, particularly under Title 3D, there's been a great interest in increasing the amount of programming that is evidence-based. Title 3D programs are really programs that are designed to help older adults prevent or manage chronic conditions and to promote healthier lifestyles. These programs are encouraged because it's believed that healthy aging will reduce healthcare costs and increase quality of life. There's a recognition that older Americans are disproportionately affected by chronic disease, and so therefore if we can mitigate the negative impact of chronic diseases and falls and reduce use of hospital services and emergency room visits, again, we'll achieve that reduction in healthcare costs and increases in quality of life. But the other attraction about the evidence-based programs that we're going to be talking about is that these are also programs that are designed to empower older adults to take control of their health. And there is, again, this desire to see these evidence-based interventions because it's believed that they will help us have the greatest impact with available Title IIID funding. So the Administration on Aging under the Administration on Community Living, if you go to their website and type in actually evidence-based, you'll come to a page where they talk about their criteria for establishing something as evidence-based. As I said, to be truly evidence-based is to be based upon randomized control trials, but the Administration on Aging is recognizing that there are a lot of things that we do that perhaps have not reached that level of evidence yet, but are successful, and they want to encourage people to build upon what they've been doing already rather than saying stop doing things and let's change completely. And so they've established a series of criteria. So they talk about a minimal level of criteria where an intervention has been demonstrated through evaluation to be effective for improving the health and well-being or reducing disease, disability, or injury among older adults. And also that it's ready for translation and implementation, that sort of it becomes easy, that it's set up in a way that it's relatively easy to be implemented across the country. And some of the examples that they give are programs like Silver Sneakers and Healthy Eating for Successful Living among older adults. In intermediate criteria, evidence-based interventions under AOA's criteria, there's been at least one article published in a peer-reviewed journal. It's been proven effective with an older adult population. There has been some kind of control condition. People weren't necessarily randomly assigned to conditions, but perhaps that there's a group that looks like the group that took the intervention, and we've collected similar data on them. And again, that there's some basis for believing that this can be successfully implemented by community-level organizations. And here examples are Eat Better, Move More, and Healthy Steps. But the highest level of criteria for evidence-based programs are those programs that have undergone experimental or quasi-experimental design, so that there's evidence for their effectiveness, but they're also at a level at which full translation has occurred in a community site. It hasn't just been in a university setting that it's been demonstrated to be effective. It's been demonstrated to be effective at community settings. And there are dissemination products that are available to the public that can be utilized so that it can be implemented at a local level. And there's all kinds of examples of this. I've given a number here. Certainly the chronic disease self-management education programs, A Matter of Balance, the National Diabetes Prevention Program, Active Choices, Active Living Every Day, Walk with Ease, Stepping On, the New York University Caregiver Intervention, which is targeted at caregivers of people with dementia, Healthy Ideas, PEARLS, which is a depression-focused intervention, and Care Transitions, which I know sort of a number of you may have been involved with. So, I would encourage people to go to the website to take a look. We're going to talk about the kinds of the programs that we support, but there's lots of other programs as well. And in fact, Carol, I'm going to give you the link to the direct link to where on the website people can find the PDF that lists all the programs and all the information related to them, so that can be part of what you put up online.
Great.
So really, as I think about types of interventions and the interventions that we're going to be talking about, certainly those interventions that have a chronic health condition focus, that are educational programs designed to help people develop skills and confidence to manage their health condition. There are physical activity-focused programs to learn strategies to increase physical activity safely. And then there are falls programs that are focused on strengths building, on educational and environmental interventions. So within all of this, and certainly in terms of what I'm going to be presenting, this really reflects a lot of work that's being done in New York by the New York State Office for the Aging, the New York State Department of Health, and our Quality and Technical Assistance Center here at the University at Albany. There's funding from the Administration on Aging, Administration on Community Living. There's Prevention and Public Health Fund monies. And there's CDC arthritis, diabetes, healthy heart, and more recently the integrated programs funding. And so all of that is presenting a number of opportunities to make some of these programs and the startup of some of these programs more inexpensively possible here in New York State. And I'll talk about some of that. So the Quality and Technical Assistance Center, the QTAC, you know, our goal really is to function as a backbone organization to support statewide scaling up and sustainability of evidence-based programs. So there are a lot of things that we're able to do, particularly over the next year or two because of the funding that we have available to help with bulk purchases, provide technical assistance, manage reach, quality assurance, and fidelity data. We have an online data registration and data entry portal that I'll talk about. We can provide training for a lot of the evidence-based interventions we promote, often no cost, certainly at low cost. And we really work with a whole range of partners, and we help people to think about how they're going to sustain these programs as well. These are not programs that we're encouraging people to do once. It was nice, let's try something else. Let's try to build a sustainable infrastructure. And you can see here that we have partners. Actually, our partners are all across the state. Some of you on the call may already be our partners, and we're also interested in welcoming new partners. And I think particularly for county offices for the aging who perhaps subcontract some of their Title IIID services, that we are interested both in partnerships with the county offices for the aging, but also with their grantees and contractors as well. So then just giving you the website for the QTAC and also our phone numbers, and this will be available as well because I'll provide Carol with the slides so you'll be able to see all of this. So we have a lot of online resources that are available too that sort of really help to support the delivery of a number of these programs. And then this is our partner portal where we have an online registration system where people can go on, they can find the nearest workshop anywhere in the state and sign up for themselves. It's also possible for physicians' practices, health centers, community agencies to go in and help people to sign up. We utilize this portal as a project management tool, also as a way of collecting data. And there's a feature on it where it's possible for people to generate the reports of workshops that they themselves have sponsored or their contractors have sponsored as regularly as they need to. And that's just a relatively recent thing that we've just added to it, trying to respond to the needs that people have been raising to us. And then we use this data as well around continuous quality improvement and really working on ensuring fidelity to faithfulness to what's intended within the programs. But let me talk about some of the programs that we currently support. And you'll see a list here, and I'm going to go through each of these and talk about them. So, but in terms of all of those programs, you know, all of them have been subjected to randomized control trials, and the kinds of outcomes that have been demonstrated for them have been improved physical activity, improved symptom management, reduced weight, reduced healthcare utilization, improved quality of life, and greater likelihood of people remaining in the community. You know, different programs have different levels of evidence, but all have evidence within at least some of these areas. So the Chronic Disease Self-Management Education Suite of programs. This is a whole set of programs that are really based around the original, well, actually the original one was an arthritis self-management program, but the Chronic Disease Self-Management program is the, if you like, the core program. That's really targeted at any chronic condition and also to people who have multiple conditions. And so regardless of your healthcare condition, the Chronic Disease self-management program is a program that you're likely to benefit from. Now, since, over time there have been some specific programs that have been developed from the chronic disease self-management approach. There's a diabetes self-management program for people with type 2 diabetes. There's a positive self-management program that's targeted at people with HIV/AIDS. And there's also a chronic pain self-management program, which, as you would expect, targets people who are experiencing chronic pain. And we're in a position to support all of these programs. So they, regardless of which one it is, they target audience as adults 18 plus with chronic health conditions. Particularly under the ADRC approach, as we have moved from looking not only at people age 60 and older, but also looking at people with disabilities, and also looking at their caregivers, we have seen an increase in the number of people who are under 60 participating in these programs. But I would have to say that the majority of people still who participate in the programs tend to be 60 and older. But we have many groups where there are people who are younger than that age. The intent is to enable participants to build self-confidence to take part in maintaining their health and managing their chronic health conditions. And some of those conditions are hypertension, arthritis, heart disease, stroke, lung disease, and diabetes. And then, as I said, there are some program versions, for example, for diabetes within this set of programs. But they all take basically the same approach. It's a group program. It covers 6 weeks, 2.5-hour sessions each week. Now, for the positive self-management program for people with HIV/AIDS, it's actually a 7-week program, but the rest are all 6 weeks. And the program provides information and teaches practical skills on managing chronic health problems. So for all of the programs I'm going to talk about, I want to give you some of the implementation basics. So for any of the CDSMEs, there is a requirement for a license. It's available through Stanford University. Delivery and training is by 2 trained leaders who facilitate each workshop. And those leaders go through 4.5 days of training and certification required through Stanford University. And the trainers can be, or the leaders can be volunteers, or they can be staff. Now, here in New York, the training can either be provided free or at a reduced cost, and I'll talk about that in a moment. There are materials required. There's a book and a CD for each participant. And because of the grants that we currently have and the work that we're currently doing, through the Quality and Technical Assistance Center, we can cover the license issues because you can work, if you sign an MOU with us, you can work under our license. You're able to access the online registration and data entry and our support around quality assurance and business planning. As I said, we can provide the training for people who have signed an MOU with us. It's likely to be free. And we can also assist with the purchasing of participant materials. Sometimes, too, that can be free as well, depending on the type of relationship that you enter into with the QTAC. So there's a lot, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of support around the CDSMEs. And as you think about doing things on a budget, that this can be done at relatively low cost. The diabetes self-management program utilizes about 50% of the content from the CDSMP, but with a type 2 diabetes focus. And then the remaining content is specific to concerns of people living with type 2 diabetes. And this specific content focuses on menu planning, nutrition label reading, managing high and low blood sugar, managing sick days, food care, testing, monitoring blood sugar, really the practical kinds of things that help people better manage their type 2 diabetes. We also have, for people living with hypertension, really at the request from the New York State Department of Health and also from some of the health providers that we're working with, we have developed a session, another 2.5-hour session that occurs after CDSMP and DSMP for those people who are interested, but for people with hypertension. And it's a hybrid health education and self-management approach to address the specific health behaviors for people living with hypertension. And this is something that we've discussed with Stanford, and they're supportive of us trying this approach out. We are gathering some data on it to see sort of if adding this additional session is helpful to people with hypertension. What we've seen already is that it's helpful to many of the physicians that they are more interested, it seems, in making the referral for someone with hypertension if we have this additional module. So we're going to continue to work with this, and we can certainly make that available to people. So that's really on the self-management of health conditions side of things. I'm going to talk some more about diabetes and prediabetes, but we also have a number of programs that are focused upon physical activity. So the simplest is the Walk with Ease program. It's targeted at adults over 18 with arthritis or lower extremity concerns and other chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension. This is a program that was developed by the Arthritis Foundation. It teaches strategies to make physical activity part of everyday life. It can either be self-managed or it can be a 6-week group program that encourages regardless, it encourages the developing, implementing, and maintaining of a safe walking routine. We support the self-managed version of the program. If you're interested in doing the 6-week group program, we can be helpful to you on that, but you will need to affiliate with your local chapter of the Arthritis Foundation. And so there's no license per se, but if you're going to do the small group format, you will need to have a cooperative agreement with the Arthritis Foundation. Trained leaders are needed for the small group format. Training's not needed for the self-directed format. The small group format, that would be in collaboration, again, with your Arthritis Foundation local chapter. Yes, there are materials, there's a book for each participant. Here's where, in terms of support from the QTAC, particularly around the self-directed format, again, we can do online registration and data entry and quality assurance. We can help with business planning assistance. We can help with bulk purchasing of the books, and actually in the immediate future we can provide books. So again, sort of as you're thinking about how do I get started up on some of these things at relatively low cost, this would be a program where we can definitely help you in that regard. We have another program, Active Living Every Day. We're just in the last few months have been getting started on rolling this out around the state. It's for adults interested in integrating physical activity into their daily lives. It helps them overcome their barriers to physical activity, make positive changes that improve their health and well-being. This is a 12-week class which incorporates a short lecture and a group discussion. Here there's no license, but there is a need for a cooperative agreement. At least one trained facilitator is needed for each class. And again, because we are rolling this out at the moment, training can be provided either for free or at a reduced cost. There is a need for materials, a book, and a step counter or a pedometer for each participant. There are also some optional online tools. Here again, we can provide help with online registration, data entry, quality assurance, business planning, and we can also provide support around ordering the materials, but we're not able to provide materials for free on this one. Active Choices is another physical activity program. It's targeted at adults 50 and over. This is a longer program. It's 6 months, but it's a telephone-based, individualized program that provides more remote kind of guidance and support, helps people to build self-management skills, and incorporate preferred physical activities in their daily lives. And we have a couple of county offices for the aging who are currently delivering this program. Here, no license is needed. There is a cooperative agreement. Trained activity coaches, peer counselors, monitor progress, modify exercise strategy, help people to modify their exercise strategies, and provide exercise tips. Here too, we can provide this training either for free or at a reduced cost. There are materials needed. There are information sheets for each participant. We can sort of provide the PDF files for those information sheets, so all you have to do is run them off. And here again, we provide online registration, data entry, quality assurance, and business planning. The National Diabetes Prevention Program. So I talked earlier about the Diabetes Self-Management Program, and that's for people who have type 2 diabetes. The National Diabetes Prevention Program, as its name implies, is really about targeting adults 18 and older who are at high risk for developing type 2 diabetes, but who have not reached criteria for type 2 diabetes. And this is measured either based on a fasting glucose or A1C test or via a short risk survey. So here the goal really is to prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes and to help people over time to increase their physical activity to 150 minutes per week and lose a minimum of 5% of body weight. It's not a weight loss program. It's not an exercise program. It's a program to help people prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. And to achieve that, what we're doing is helping people, as I said, to increase physical activity and to lose about 5% of body weight. This program consists of 16 weekly 1-hour course sessions followed by 6 monthly post-course sessions. There's 12 to 15 people in a group. The program emphasizes sustainable lifestyle changes, including improved nutrition, increased physical activity, stress reduction, and coping strategies. There is no license for this program. There is a cooperative agreement needed. The delivery is by a trained lifestyle coach who facilitates each group session, and we can certainly support this by providing free or reduced cost 2-day training for those coaches and also ongoing mentoring. There are also other groups within the state who are providing this coaching as well, coach training as well. There are materials that are required. There's participant handbooks, there's a book, there's weekly food and activity trackers. We can provide, as part of the training, we would provide these materials to coaches. There are also websites where additional materials can then be downloaded and printed off. Here we're, again, providing online registration and data entry, quality assurance, business planning, and can help with the ordering of materials. And, you know, as I said, a lot of the materials can be accessed online and simply printed off. So let's just, in terms of this program, just to clarify that it is limited to persons who are 18 years and older with a body mass index of 24 or greater. For Asian Americans, it's 22 or greater. But those individuals also have to have prediabetes, and of the group, 50% must have their prediabetes diagnosed through a blood test, or they should have a history of gestational diabetes. And the other 50% are declared eligible if they screen positive for prediabetes based on the National Diabetes Prevention Program risk test, which is a test that's done, loadable certainly from our website, but principally from the Centers for Disease Control website. You know, we certainly see people utilizing this, for example, at health fairs as something for people to complete. We absolutely encourage people, if they score positive for prediabetes based on the risk test, that they should go and see their physician. So often people will then actually get the blood test done as well. And that certainly helps in terms of meeting the criteria. The importance of meeting the criteria of 50% by blood test or gestational diabetes and 50% by the risk test is that there is a process of being recognized as a provider of this program by the Centers for Disease Control, and that's an important criteria that you're meeting those, that 50% by blood test criterion. But these are all things that we can help people with in terms of figuring out how they might meet these requirements. There are some grants available from other groups as well, so this is definitely one that if people are looking to build up some capacity, there are definitely resources available at the moment to support that. We'll talk about a matter of balance, which is a program that really targets individuals who are fearful of falling or concerned about falling. It's targeted primarily at adults 60 and over who are ambulatory, able to problem solve, concerned about falling, interested in improving flexibility, balance, and strength, and have restricted their activities because of concerns about falling. And I think that as we look at older groups, it's often something that people talk about. It's not just the issue of have I fallen, but am I concerned that I might fall? So the program really helps participants to reduce fall risk and their fear of falling, and I see I have a typo there. I'll fix it. It improves fall self-management and improves fall self-efficacy, and it promotes physical activity. So this is delivered in 8 group sessions. They can be delivered weekly or twice weekly. They emphasize practical coping strategies to reduce fear of falling, and they teach fall prevention strategies. So again, there's no license per se required. There is a cooperative agreement with the developers of the program. Trained coaches facilitate each class. Training can be provided for free or at a reduced cost depending on resources that are available. There are materials required. There's a workshop information packet, and there are handouts for each participant. We can, as always, assist with online registration and data entry and quality assurance and business planning. We have limited ability to provide training on this program because there's a requirement that that we be able to supervise the people that we have trained. But talk with us, and we can certainly connect you up with, if we're not able to, with groups that are. So we're very interested in seeing certainly people think about those programs. We're also very interested in helping people to build a sustainable infrastructure for those programs. And we would encourage you to think about sort of what really works in your particular situation. Are you going to be an organization that manages these activities? Or are you going to be an organization that's involved in the direct delivery? And if you're managing them, how do you want to manage them? So we certainly across the state, we have seen sort of what we call centralized models where a single organization is coordinating all of this, maybe throughout the county or maybe across several counties. And that organization can then manage key delivery activities for all the different partners. There's also an attraction that perhaps they can work on attracting multiple types of funding to achieve the capacity goals for all. And it's, we've certainly seen that be a successful way to serve targeted populations. And if people are interested in exploring sort of how that might work in their county or in their region, we would be very happy to work with you on trying to address that. It's got the advantages that it streamlines access for implementation sites, leaders, participants, and any evaluation data, simplifies cost structures, and it makes things less complex, enabling you to better manage perhaps some of the quality issues. But, there are challenges. It may be, really sort of, does that make sense in terms of the area that you're seeking to develop or to provide these programs in, and is there too much overlap between partners for each to be able to deliver a program at a level that makes sense for them? So again, sort of something that you really need to think about, something that we would be happy to work with you around thinking about, sort of develop what really works in your particular region. In a more decentralized approach, as decentralized implies, that sort of partners manage sort of different parts of it rather than there being one partner that does everything, and then the program resources get shared across the programs. And again, sort of may make more sense for your region and for your approach, and we're happy to work with you to think about sort of how that may work. Here, the workload gets shared across partners, resources get shared, and it has the potential to increase reach. But it may make it more difficult to manage some of the quality and the fidelity issues. You really have to decide who will do what, when, and for whom. And it might make access more complex for partners, leaders, and participants, and then sort of trying to figure out sort of how the costs get shared. What I will say is whether you're doing a centralized model or a decentralized model, compared to where we started from, because we now have this online registration and data portal system, we can certainly be helpful in helping groups to sort of better manage some of these issues as they move forward. So I'm going to stop there and transfer things over to my fellow presenter. I did show you our contact information. It will be on the materials that will be posted. We really are interested. In working with each of you and sort of being as helpful as possible in making these things happen. So now I'm going to switch things over to Mary.
Okay. Well, thank you, Phil. I hope everybody can see my screen now. I think the QTAC can really offer a lot of support to all of us who are trying to figure out this new world and incorporating evidence-based programs in our counties. In Chautauqua County, as you heard, I am a physical therapist by profession, and so was kind of on this path of both evidence-based programs and exercise and wellness is a love of mine, given what I did as a physical therapist. But I'm going to focus today on not all the programs that we're delivering, but the fall prevention programs in particular that we do in our office in Chautauqua County. There is, in the Affordable Care Act, a lot of focus on fall prevention programs because of the costs associated with falls. And I think it's of particular interest to all of us as aging professionals because falls are the thing that usually start that downward spiral in people and losing their independence. So the person falls and either they develop a fear of falling and get less and less active, that winds them in a nursing home, or that fall ends up in some kind of hospitalization, or and that leads them to a nursing home. So in the Affordable Care Act, they're recognizing that there's such a huge cost to falls and that many falls are preventable. And so there's a particular emphasis for physicians' practices now to screen for falls and help refer people to falls prevention programs. So we have done a lot of things on many different levels with falls. The first thing I wanted to talk about, though, are kind of some easy to implement screening tools for falls. And the first one comes from the STEADY toolkit, which you can find on the CDC website. And there is a lot of things in there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about all the different things that are in there, but one of the first things that we started implementing was a fall screen that's in this Stay Independent brochure. And we actually implemented an earlier version of this called My Falls Free Plan. So this is a 12-question yes or no screen that if the person scores greater than 4 on the screen, they're at risk for falling. So this is not an intervention, so you're going to have to think about what do I want to do with this and how am I going to potentially move somebody who's at high risk to a lower risk. But at least it gets you started, and it is, evidence-based. It's hopefully what your physician's offices will be screening for as well, so it's a help to them. In my county, we have an accountable care organization. There are 9 physicians' practices and 39 physicians, and they have adopted the STEADY toolkit as their fall prevention mechanism. So they're going to be doing this actual screen just like Office for the Aging, and we'll be sharing it with them. Now, this fall screen, it's inside a brochure at this point, but it can be pulled out and used on its own. And that's exactly what our office has done. We have pulled out the screen, and there is no cost or there's no copyright issues as long as you mention, who has developed this screen. So it's really just the cost of reprinting. You may be able, and if you go on the CDC website, it does say that you can order these, but I found that you can order them sometimes when they have them available, and at other times not. But you can always get the downloadable PDF version and reprint the whole Stay Independent brochure, or just the screen. So what we did was we took this screen and we reprinted it. We also added a physician's consent at the bottom. And we required all our ISEP home care agencies to complete this during their regular monitoring. Now, we did get a little pushback, but we found out that they were also filling out another piece of paper for us that really was redundant. It was actually questions, a safety screen that was captured in our New York State assessment. So we eliminated that and asked them to do this, and they found it very easy to do. So once they completed, we actually had it printed in duplicate so they could leave a copy at the home of the client, and then a copy would come to the Office for the Aging. Our completed screens we would then fax to the doctor so that he could hopefully do some follow-up. Also, as people scored very high, then we used it as a source of referrals, making a phone contact, and then telling them about community programs that might help them reduce their falls risk. So maybe our Tai Chi programs, or stepping on, or moving for better balance. And we're going to talk about those a little more. So this was one screening tool. Another screening tool, the Community Health Foundation of Western and Central New York was very concerned about falls and the cost of falling and the impact of falls on our elderly. And they started a coalition called the Step Up to Stop Falls Coalition. And they are working with many different organizations. It started in Erie County, and now they've branched out to, I believe, 8 counties, several in Western New York and several in Central. But they have a whole toolkit of things, and one of the screening tools that we've implemented, this slide shows you a little bit about what's in their resource kit. I'm going to really focus on 2 things, and we'll start talking about the Home Safety Self-Assessment tool, which is an easy-to-implement assessment. And then they also have exercise and balance programs and a Tai Chi DVD that we use a lot. But go ahead and this should be a place where you can find things that have already been developed. They'll tell you about implementation, many times help you with the cost of the tools or the copies of the assessments or training for the program. So a lot of neat things in there. So here's the Home Safety Self-Assessment tool. This is actually a 23-page tool. It's very comprehensive. It looks at hazards in and around the home. So there are different things that contribute to falling. One of the things, of course, is your physical strength, but also the environment plays a role. So this tackles the environmental in and around your home hazards that may impact somebody falling. And most people who are elderly who fall do it at home. So it makes sense to screen for that. It is lengthy, but you get a score at the end, and the higher the score, of course, the higher the fall's risk. Again, because it's a screening tool, you need to have it kind of partner with something else that's going on so that you can remediate those hazards. So if you're doing this assessment and maybe doing it yearly with clients, you may not see any movement unless you actually intervene. But it can be a really neat thing that you can include a local resource section. It could be a complement to our home repairs and access program. So if you're trying to decide, you know, should I put safety rails in or should I help people remediate some of these, it might be done in conjunction with that. Now, it does say it's a self-assessment tool, but I've really found practically you need staff or volunteers to actually do the assessment with the senior. As I said, it's 23 pages. So it goes through all their entrances, it goes into the home and looks at their living room, dining room, kitchen, bedroom. Again, something to think about is just doing the assessment tool itself, even though it's evidence-based, is not going to necessarily make a change. You know, clients, if they're willing to change, or other things that might be impacting their willing, you know, you might identify the hazards, but maybe they don't have the funding to actually do the remediation. So, as I said, cost of changes will influence the impact and the client's readiness to change. So we have also gotten some, in addition to using ISAP ancillary funds to help with this program, you could go after specific grants to help remediate the hazards. But pretty much it's a low-cost, evidence-based tool. Really the cost of reproducing the document is all that's involved. And if you're in a county that is served by the Community Health Foundation, they may provide some of the copies for you. And this was developed in conjunction with UB, and they continue to work on perfecting this. The original document is actually longer, and so it can be locally customized, and you can add resources like places to find handymen or low-cost solutions. So the next thing I'm going to talk about are some exercise programs around falls that we've implemented in Chautauqua County. So exercise programs, unlike a screening tool, just are a little more involved in getting them going. So the first one is Tai Chi, and as I alluded to in the Step Up to Stop Falls Coalition, they actually developed a Tai Chi DVD, which I found is a great introduction to Tai Chi. Many people in our rural county, you talk to them about Tai Chi and they have no idea what that's all about. So having something, an introduction to Tai Chi before you're trying to recruit people to go for more formal Tai Chi programs where you need a trained leader, this DVD was very helpful. The other thing is that it has two forms of Tai Chi, and they're all forward-facing. So when you're running the DVD player, seniors can look at it the whole time they're doing the DVD. It does start them off in sitting, and then so that they can get the hand forms down, and then progresses them to standing. I have had a little confusion as we've implemented this in different senior sites or one at an adult home, is they were only doing the sitting forms, and unfortunately sitting forms are not going to improve balance, which is the goal of Tai Chi programs. They're slow-moving exercise that and poses that improve your balance as you keep practicing them. So if you go into the Step Up to Stop Falls Coalition, you will see, you can even watch the video, but they do have DVDs, and it's called For Older Adults, Exercises to Improve Balance, Mobility, and Strength. That it is Tai Chi and Qigong. Moving for Better Balance is the CDC-sponsored Tai Chi. And it's also, we've been working on implementing this with the New York State Department of Health and the Y of the USA. It's 8 forms of Tai Chi with variations. They do have to be a trained, certified leader. And it's important that these programs run, you know, a lot of our programs are ongoing, but a minimum you need to do it 1 hour, twice a week, for 8 to 10 weeks to really see a change in your participants. So whether they're doing the DVD of exercises, we are encouraging them to meet that minimum, meet twice a week for an hour, even if you have to repeat the forms, because you're not going to see a change in your participants if you are not doing the length of time. And soon they're going to be implementing a new program called Tai Chi for Arthritis. It's my understanding that all the Tai Chi programs have now been declared as fall prevention, but the only one that's really listed on the website, you know, is the Moving for Better Balance. So you really need to check with the AOA to see if the program qualifies. So a little bit about implementing these programs. I'm going to start with the DVD on the right. Of course, that was very simple. You need a place to hold it, and but you do have to worry about recruiting participants. You don't really need a group leader, but we found it was very helpful. And when you're doing this kind of intervention, of course, you need to do some pre-testing. We have done the tug test and the 30-second chair stand test for our pre-test, and we do it again as a post-test. And you have to keep attendance so that you know how many units of service each person got from the exercise intervention. So, and you have to keep a little bit of information on the client themselves so that you can re-enter them here into our Harmony system. But pretty much the Community Health Foundation has been giving out some free copies of this to, as I said, their service area, but they may also allow you to, they have allowed people to burn DVDs, but you should check with them. It does say that it's copyrighted, but they've been very liberal about that. The Moving for Better Balance program, the CDC Tai Chi, needs, you know, trained, certified leaders to run the program. And it can be anywhere from free, you know, our first programs were free because they were sponsored by the Department of Health and the CDC. But I've seen, you know, charges up to about $200 a person to register to become a trained leader. And there are differences between leaders and master trainers. So this is a leader program. And then, of course, if you have to travel anywhere to go to that. So something to think about. The Y of the USA has recently entered into an agreement with the CDC to produce this program. And I found that when you go through, you know, so they will train people to become leaders, but they're training them for a Y certification, and sometimes that has prerequisites. So I had to talk with my local Y because a lot of my senior volunteers did not necessarily need Y certification. So they allowed me to have seniors go through this or volunteers go through this that were just going to do it for the Office for the Aging. So they got a diploma, but it wasn't a Y certification. Again, you have to think about places to hold this, recruiting, you know, not only clients but your leaders, if they're volunteer leaders, and sustaining those leaders. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end, what we've done locally to support and sustain our volunteer leaders. Staff leaders, you can do it, but you do run into a capacity issue. And with all exercises, you got to, you know, in order to demonstrate impact, you have to be doing, you know, your pre and post testing as well as keeping attendance. There are some minor costs for for booklets, but you might be able to get those provided by the Department of Health. As I said, the local Y is a resource. I just put a little note on here because NICOA's website has some information about becoming trained for Moving for Better Balance, and they actually say that it's a 2-day training and several boosters, but we have in New York State been able to do it for a 1 to 2 day training. Strong Women's Program is a program that's not exclusively, it's not really fall prevention, it's really promoted as remediation for osteoporosis or pre-osteoporosis, osteopenia. So it really works on the consequences of a fall. You know, our seniors, they fall, they break a hip, they break their wrist, they get compression fractures of the spine, and that starts them on that downward spiral. And because osteoporosis and osteopenia is kind of a silent disease, they don't realize it often until a fracture occurs. But Healthy Bones, that we call it locally, is the Tufts University Strong Women's Program. And that's a 10-week program that is through with progressive resistive exercise, works on improving the bone and increasing bone strength. Certainly there are pharmacological interventions for bone strength, but they're not for everyone, and this could be great in conjunction with that. A little more involved, the leaders have to attend a 2 to 3 day training seminar to be certified. It's more involved because there's a lot of equipment. You need weights. This is a progressive resistive exercise, so exercise with weights for both the arms and the legs. You need floor mats, and you need handouts, and you need a location with enough space to handle this. Again, I said it's, you know, in order to make an impact, it's got to be run at least twice a week for 10 weeks. It can be ongoing. But you can have a little bigger class size, up to 20. People can become trained leaders, but only master trainers, they call them Strong Women Ambassadors, can train new leaders. We have been working locally with Cornell Cooperative Extension out of Penn State, who has been training our leaders. So some implementation issues with the Strong Women's Program is that the training costs and where the training is going to be held. The first time we did this, we had over 20 people we wanted to be trained, so it was less expensive for us to pay the Strong Women, the master trainer, to come here and put them up overnight. But training costs run around $200 plus travel to become a certified trained coach. Then there's the equipment costs. You need leg weights and arm weights, and you need a variety of them and enough of them for all the participants to use. We found that it's good to have a place where you can store these. You don't want to be lugging all these weights around with you week to week. So wherever you're going to hold the the exercise program, you also need a place to store your equipment that's secure. Of course, with every program, recruiting and retaining both the people who want to take the course and volunteer leaders is really important. I wanted just to touch on is that charging for the class. I think we are trying to move toward, for all of our exercise programs, charging a certain amount to help cover equipment, as well as people feel more invested if they are paying for a program. And we have not found, we like all of our OFA programs, we call it a $20 donation. And by keeping it a donation, you know, if somebody says, I can't pay it, we can still offer them the class. But most people are very happy. You know, $20 for 10 weeks of exercise is $1 a class. because they understand that, we have to send people to training to be a leader. There are continuing costs with leg weights and arm weights. We really have not had a problem with that. And we've also offered receipts to people to turn into their insurance companies. I don't know how successful that's been, but I have talked to a few insurance companies, and they said that they would honor that. So insurance companies are paying more and more for evidence-based exercise programs. So I think it's important for us to put a cost to them, not only for future reimbursement, but as I said, because there's ongoing costs associated. And also our leaders, they often hold these programs at a church or another site that may require some cost to have it there. The churches, we try to give them a little donation, and we use some of the what we receive from the participants to do that. There are paper materials that have to be copied off and given to the participants. So the next program I want to talk about is an education program for fall prevention. There's so many aspects of falling, and Stepping On, which is the CDC's fall prevention program, really touches on all the different aspects of falling. It's a 7-week program, 2 hours, with 2 leaders who run the class. And these are small groups of seniors, 10 to 14 participants, who come to class and they explore all the different things that impact their falling. So we not only talk about the environment and exercise, but we also talk about vision. We talk about community, moving about in the community, and pharmacological factors. Being on 4 or more medicines can put you at risk for falls. Similar to CDSMP, Stepping On uses small group discussion and adult learning principles to really empower these the people who participate into making a change. So they come in and they think that they're kind of worried about falling, but they don't really know that there's anything that they can do about it. And as they go through the course, they really learn, kind of internalize and become activated to make a change. This 7-week program is followed up by a home visit, because we are talking about home hazards in the class. And by the time we get to the home visit, it's really amazing at how they're so eager to show us all the different areas of their homes and get our opinion and our ideas about what they might change that could reduce their risk. So again, this is a little more difficult to implement because you do need, trained leaders, and 2 of them. There are handouts. There is a display table as we explore all the reasons why people fall, and we bring to the display table some ideas of what we can do differently. Tape to tape down rugs, or equipment, shoes and clothing examples to show them what might help them and what might be a problem. And you also need weights because we do talk about exercise and progressing them with weights. The other thing that this program has are guest experts that you invite to present on different topics. So we have a physical therapist who comes in and talks about, getting up from a fall, using assistive devices, and the exercises themselves and how they can help them. We have a pharmacist who comes in and talks about polypharmacy and talks about, what people should look for when they're taking a medicine. What do you need to talk with your doctor about, and how certain medicines make you feel. who could maybe do a review of your medicines on a regular basis to see if any of them are putting you at risk. We bring in a vision specialist and a community mobility person. So this is, quite involved program. It's a little longer training than the other programs. We actually have a 3-day training for leaders and peer leaders. If you are fortunate and want to become a master trainer, that's another day. But one good thing is that New York State is a recipient of the grant from the CDC to expand this program, and we have 6 master trainers who have started to hold trainings around New York State. 2 are myself and my nurse in Chautauqua County, and then we have 2 trainers in Broome and 2 out in Suffolk County. There are lots of materials and handouts for each of these classes as we run them. So you need, binders and printed material, reprint materials. There's the display table and weights. Those can be reused, but you're looking at a cost of about $200 to put that together. We could explore with New York State whether there's help they did help us to put our display table together and get us all the resources for that. Recruiting participants can sometimes be a challenge with this program, but we've worked closely with MD offices, and as we are out doing these community screenings, we use then those community screenings to tell people about the Stepping On program and refer them to that. You may think that, the guest experts, you've got to recruit those for the classes, and they're not a must, but they really, really add to the program. And we didn't find it as difficult as we thought it might be. It's just time-consuming. So we usually, depending on where we're holding the class, get a local PT and pharmacist. We found vision specialists at the Blind Association or the local eye doctor, and then community mobility people. If you have anybody working on complete streets, they can certainly talk about moving about in the community safely, which is really important for seniors to attend, for all of us to attend to, but we want seniors in this class to focus on that. Before we open it up to questions, I also wanted to talk about something we've implemented in Chautauqua County as our local model for delivering these evidence-based programs. We're relying on volunteers to do a lot of this. But talking to volunteers, what can we do to make the volunteer's life as easy as possible? And we've kind of taken that as our mantra. So we have a health educator. She is a full-time under civil service health education aide, and she's paid by a mixture of grants, some of the money that we get from the DOH grant and the CDC, 3D funds. When we had some funding from the Health Foundation, we also utilized that to help pay our health educator, and local funding. Judy Blitz, who is our current health educator, is trained in all the programs, but she doesn't necessarily run the programs. So she is running some chronic disease self-management courses and helping out with the Stepping On program, but basically her role is to get everything ready, to advertise and recruit the participants. If our volunteer leader doesn't have a place to hold it, she might help develop that place to hold it. She gets all the copies ready and prepares all the materials. She orders and keeps track of our equipment. And then the big thing that I've heard from volunteers is they really don't want to be doing the testing. So in the first few classes that we did, especially around healthy bones, there were several leaders, and so we all went on the first day and we tested together. We set up stations and tested all the clients. who are coming through. But this led us to thinking that this is what we really need to do as our health educator or as the Office for the Aging. We go in on the first day of class and do the pre-testing, and then go back in on the last day or the second to last day, do all the post-testing. And our volunteers, all they have to do is take attendance and run the class. And it's really worked well for us. Plus, it is really helping us to get consistent data. When you're doing any kind of standardized testing, it's important, you know, if you have several different people who are doing the test, you might have some differences. So having the same person do the pre and post testing also makes your data more reliable. So this is just some resources for evidence-based programs. If you're getting started and you don't know where to go, there's a lot of people that are working on, have worked out the how-tos and where to get trained, and from education programs to screening tools, etc. So AOA, the Health Foundation, as I said, the National Council on Aging. And as Phil has said, and as Carol told you, we're happy to be a resource for you and share our PowerPoint presentations. So now I will turn it over to Alyssa, so she can, or sorry, to Carol.
That's okay.
Alyssa's name here.
All right. Thank you, Marianne and Phil. That was phenomenal. I was riveted. Just really good information. I do have a handful of questions, so I'm going to X out of that. Okay. So I think folks, I have a couple of questions for the presenters that came up. The first one that came up was for you, Marianne, or either Phil, both of you are familiar with these. There's a couple of agencies that currently do a matter of balance at their organization, and they wanted to just differentiate. What are some of the key pieces that are different between a matter of balance and stepping on?
Well, that's interesting thought, because I don't do matter of balance. So it's hard for me to tell you what the difference is. It's
okay.
7 weeks it's a 2-hour session for 7 weeks, once a week for 7 weeks. Our pre-tests are usually a questionnaire for the participant, a TUG score, and a timed up sit-to-stand test. It's a very prescribed program, stepping on, much like CDSMP. It's almost scripted from front to back. So you spend 5 minutes and you talk about this thing, and then you spend, you know, so much time. And so all of your classes are very scripted. Even the guest experts who come, there are prep materials that you send to them. I want you to talk about A, B, and C, and you've got this much time. It's small group learning, so the point of it is to facilitate conversation about falling with your participants, not just delivering the information, but what we try to do is get them to resolve, you know, identify first of all what are the risks, and then what can we do to remediate it. So by the end of the class, the facilitators are talking very little, and the clients are learning from each other. Does that help?
That's great. Phil, do you have any other comments on that?
Well, you know, the only other thing I would add is that, you know, matter of balance is specifically targeted at the fear of falling. And, you know, and as part of addressing that, there is an effort to help people increase their levels of physical activity. But I would agree with Marianne that perhaps the biggest difference is in the level of scripting, that matter of balance is not as scripted as stepping on, although there are clearly core required things that need to be covered in the sessions.
That's great. I have more questions about referrals. You know, how do you generate your referrals? How do you get folks in the door? Where do they come from?
Okay, so one, I'm very lucky in my county that our Office for the Aging newsletter is a section of the paper every month. And so when we have classes coming up, we do a lot of different things. You know, we will recruit, we will put an article in our section of the paper telling them that things are going to be starting. We work with local senior centers, so we try to get the information out to their groups as they're meeting. We can often we'll implement things at dining sites, at congregate meal sites, so we'll recruit that way. And really successful for especially the Stepping On program has been working with doctors' offices. We'll tell them we're having a class in Westfield, and so we approached Westfield family physicians. This class is coming up. Do you want to, we'll give you the flyer, and do you want to recommend people? And that was terrific. That got us a lot of clients. In fact, we started 2 classes because of that.
Yeah, and I'd reinforce all of those things as being really effective. Some of the other things that we've seen is, as well as Office for the Aging newsletters, we find that church bulletins are a great source, particularly if the class is being held in that faith community. That people who participate in the class are often great ambassadors in terms of getting their friends to sign up for the class as well, and that we should be encouraging that. We're also finding, working with federally qualified health clinics as well as with individual physician practices, we are now encouraging, we have several physician practices, for example, who make the information on the programs available in their treatment rooms. They have a poster up, they have a tear-off that people can utilize. We're also starting to get some of the physicians' practices. They've actually asked us to develop some video pieces to show on their patient education in the waiting room, and we're doing that now as well. We find that interviews on the radio, interviews on local TV, we always get a big surge of classes right after, of people being interested. But the other thing that we're doing really is sort of trying to push this online registration option, both as a way of getting people to sort of see the ease with which they can sign up and find a class, and also that sort of it really helps to get health clinics, physicians, other groups really engaged. And then the last thing I'll mention is that we've been doing a lot of work with supermarkets, particularly supermarkets with pharmacies, and often they will put a flyer about the classes in prescription bags and also advertise them right there. We even have a couple of supermarkets that are now offering the classes in their community rooms, and that really has been increasing the number of participants. And they'll often provide a snack, and they'll cover the costs of advertising the classes and things like that, which, again, sort of as you're doing these things on a budget, finding someone else who'll pay some of these recruitment costs is a really great help.
And I want to add to that 2 things. One is, I don't know if CDSMP has this, but Stepping On certainly has a letter that a participant who's gone through the program can use to recruit their friends who they think might benefit from the program. So that's kind of a neat thing to hand out at the end of the class. If you loved this program, here's a letter, tell your friends about us. And the other thing was, I think that thought just went out of my brain. I can't think of what I was going to say. So, you were saying about sponsors for the program, and in lieu of charging for the program, we have found different faith-based organizations. Actually, Heritage Ministries in our county is independent living all the way down to a skilled nursing home. And they have started an community outreach center in our local mall. And that has been a site not only to hold these programs, but then they've sponsored all the refreshments and other costs. So that's been helpful.
Thanks. Those are
One
great
other thing that
ideas.
I'll add is that we have a lot of templates on our website. We have a lot of templates on our website for flyers, for letters, things like that that you can download and easily adapt to your own use.
Wonderful. And just so that folks know, a lot of information has been shared through the chat. We've got a couple of good websites. All of that will be posted with the recording and the PowerPoint so that you'll have the opportunity to have all of that information, including the websites that we've mentioned. I also had a audience member from Delaware County share with us that they do Matter of Balance, and it's very, very similar. It's 8 weeks, 2 hours, very scripted, so she wanted to make sure that I share that there are a lot of similarities between those two. So thank you guys. Another question from the audience. The biggest challenge that they're facing is just the time commitment for evidence-based programming. That seems to be the biggest hurdle. Does either of you have any advice on how to address that?
Well,
I go ahead, Mary.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I would, it was one of the reasons why we wanted in this webinar to present a number of different interventions, because I really do think that you have to look at what makes the most sense for your agency and your community, what makes the most sense for the staff and for the volunteers that you potentially have available. We've talked about a lot of interventions. Some of them take 60 minutes a week. Some of them clearly are 2.5 hours and longer, that sort of some are for 6 weeks, some, like for example, the National Diabetes Prevention Program, really will take close to a year to implement, that you really have to look at sort of what really makes the most sense. One of the advantages of evidence-based programs is that we know that they work. So whatever one you pick that makes the most sense in your area, you're going to do good by implementing that program. So we really want to encourage people to really look at the different programs. It's a reality that there are funds available for some at the moment and not for others, but really, really think about what's sustainable and what really works with the resources that you have, and pick among those programs. And again, there are plenty of us here in the state who have tried a lot of these different programs. Be in touch with us, and we'll help you sort of talk through some of those decisions. We already had sort of people chiming in with sort of their experiences already in this, that sort of find the program that really works for you. And the time issue is an important issue, so find one that lives within the time that you have available.
And I just want to add to that. I think that's why I started off talking about screening tools, evidence-based screening tools, because you may have, in my county, we have a health network who is doing a lot of the chronic disease self-management programs. But if we're screening and referring people to them, that could be a help. With fall prevention, we don't necessarily have to do all the exercise interventions ourselves. Maybe we're screening and identifying people and getting them to the WISE program, or having the Y come in and do a program for us, or help us to identify leaders. So there are people in your county who are doing evidence-based interventions, and you may be helping that process by getting the people that you're touching into those programs and making a difference that way.
That's great. I think one of the questions that came up was really, how do we get started? And those answers both really do help to address some of that. Any other tips for folks who are really just starting out with evidence-based programming? What about commitment, getting participants to commit, or any other tips that you guys have up your sleeves?
Activating clients is always, the difficult thing. So sometimes recruiting participants from the community, cold calling people is more difficult. I found that, physicians' referrals, especially for exercise programs, gets them in the door, and then usually when they start the program, you know, that hook is there. We don't really lose people after they start, and I've found anyway, especially with stepping on, and I hear the same about the CDSME programs. You know, they're not sure what they're doing there, but once they start the program, they become so invested that they complete it. So the hook is to get them in the door and get them started.
And I'll just add that if you are thinking about getting started on evidence-based programs, and whether you're interested in any of the programs that I covered, or you're interested in other evidence-based programs, you know, part of the role of the QTAC is really to encourage the development of capacity around evidence-based programs. So no matter what the program is, if you have questions, please be in touch with us. We have staff here who will be happy to talk with you and help you find that right program, help you to figure out some of those startup issues, help connect you with the training, whether it's training we provide or training that others provide. We are very committed to helping increase the numbers of people in New York who are participating in evidence-based programs.
That's great, and thank you. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks who will take you up on that. We got a couple of questions about how to get in touch with your agency and how to develop a partnership. So I think that will help. One last question, unless any more come in, is just we've got someone who's wondering if there's any evidence-based water exercise programs. Either one of you familiar with any of those?
Well, it depends on, I'm not. I did get a question, you know, there are arthritis programs that happen in the water. I'm not really sure about evidence-based for that. Someone had asked me at another seminar whether water programs would be effective for fall prevention, and there's no evidence that I know of that. Because that's a supported situation, it actually makes the exercise easier. So, but so it doesn't help for fall prevention, but that doesn't mean that it's not effective for some other condition. Certainly, rehab centers are using it post-surgically to get people back in shape after knee or hip surgery, but there are many arthritis because it actually takes stress off the joints that find it easier to do in a pool.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of a program, but I'm sure there are programs, so I will find that information, send it to you, Carol, and you could put that up on the website as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, since we've got no more questions and we're just about running out of time anyway, I just want to give you guys a big thank you so much for all of the wonderful information you presented to us today, and remind folks that they will be available on the website that we sent out earlier. Give us a couple of days to get it all together and get it all up there, but it will be available for you. So thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Phil. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of our Happy Monday here. Thank you, guys.
You're very welcome.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.